So here's my whole Thomas collection, and this collection is a very young one in the sense that it hasn't taken very long for me to collect this amazing variety of Thomas tanks. And I think, well, it took me ages to sort this video out. It's January, I'm doing this in January 2013, and I initially placed all the Thomases down, and I just thought, well, how can I make any sense out of the madness of all these different styles? Well, the first obvious thing I did was I moved the larger models to the back. I think anyone would do that. And the back ones are up on plastic tubs. You can sort of see the tubs if you look carefully through there. And I've tried to get them in groups. There's a group of the Thomas torches there. But it's not always perfect because I've got some of the plush models there. But if you dart back over here, I've got the plush set up there, and there's a few up the back there as well. So for the thought of trying to get them all in some sort of arrangement that was connected together, that was actually very difficult. And I mean, I just wanted them to look good on camera. And if I step back, I've got all the ones on that side pointing this way to me. If I point the camera forward, they're all pointing at me there, and if I go to the other side, they're all staring at me as well. So if I go back to a focal point out here, in essence, if I turn the camera around, all those Thomases are looking at me. It's actually quite a daunting sight, all those eyes saying, hey, who are you? I was planning on putting my son in this video and like landing him right in the middle, sitting in there amongst all the Thomases, but I can tell you this actually freaks him out. This is like Thomas overload for him, and when he sees this, he actually goes, oh, too much Thomas, too much Thomas. So yeah, it's too much Thomas, alright. It's a bit of a freak out for him. Now, I am considering taking this to an exhibition, a train exhibition, and having it on display. But one of the big problems is, and look, it took me a couple of days just to basically line these up in some sort of fashion that looks coherent and looks good. Now, I've got to make some way of making this a very speedy process, and I would only assume, if you look at the way people do model train shows, is they come along and all the layouts are basically pre-done. They pull them out of the cars or their trailers, and everything's all pre-made, so maybe I'm going to have to make up some sort of, I don't know, template or something all these sit on where it's already on display in a sense. But that's going to be a massive task to try and pull this off. What I'd like to do for you now is come in and pick off a few of the models that possibly you haven't seen, and some of my favourite in this amazing collection. And I'll tell you what, Thomas is a beautiful thing to collect because there are just so many varieties. I'm surprised myself. I never thought there'd be this many varieties of Thomas, but let me come in, pick off a few, and we'll have a bit of discussion about why I like them. Well, this first Thomas is actually quite a large Thomas. I've got a Thomas Take and Play in there, so you can see the scale difference between these two. The fat controls in there, and this is from Mega Bloks. It's a sort of Thomas where you could have built the Thomas up, or you can actually build a train station as well. I think most people would build this Thomas. And considering I had a small Mega Bloks Thomas from a little while ago, which wasn't very attractive to look at, this one is the exact opposite. It's actually quite a beautiful model to look at, and I think most people who purchase this would be very pleased with what they have. You know, it's funny, a little while back, the people were saying you've got to check your Thomas models for derpy eyes, and this one's got, well, slightly derpy eyes, but it still looks like fun. A smile that's made $1 billion. I better show the fat controller because some out there might say, you never showed him properly. Well, there he is. There's actually a very good rendition of him in this Mega Bloks set. Well, this next one's a new one for me. The ladies down at the charity shop had collected this one for me, and I've got a Thomas Take and Play next to him, so you can see the size relationship that we're looking at here. This wooden model has a face which is actually reminiscent of the paper-faced ERTL models. And even though it looks fairly fresh, I can assure you it's actually quite an old model. If I look underneath, the licensing detail revealed to me 2001. And 2001 was quite some time ago now. But there's one neat little trick this Thomas has got up its sleeve. And if I can do this, it actually pulls apart as a wooden puzzle. And that's quite impressive indeed. Come on, Thomas, pull yourself back together. In my mind, it's the little tiny Thomases like this which are often the most interesting in my collection. You just don't see toys like this today, and I'm sure someone out there will know a little bit more about this very unusual puzzle-styled wooden Thomas. That's better. I knew you could get yourself back together. Well, these next two Thomases are possibly the most discussed Thomas models on Earth. You could start debate which would rage into World War III if you start talking about what you like and dislike about each model. Got the Bachmann model here and the Hornby model here. Let's just call it HOOO. I'm not going to get into which is which because I don't know, because, well, I'm not a rail fan. But if I spin them around very slowly, you can start to just see the massive differences between the rendering of what Hornby have done versus what many people say the elegance of the Bachmann model. One thing I will say about the Bachmann model is, unfortunately, I just don't feel the face is right, and that's the big letdown. If only they had crafted a nicer face on the Bachmann model, it would go down as one of the all-time ultimate Thomas tanks to have in your collection. I mean, to me, that face looks more like James. I don't know what you think, but it looks like a James face to me. Hornby have a pretty good face on their model, right down to the Botox stare. Well, anyway, both models serve the purpose that they were designed for, and it's funny, I've had a lot of American YouTubers or rail fans contact me, and they are desperate to get their hands on the Hornby Thomas. And I'm not sure whether Hornby quite understand the desire, or the niche desire for their model over in the USA. And I know someone's going to ask, there is a Thomas take and play size relationship between the Bachmann in the middle and the Hornby on the other end. Possibly looking down on top, you get a much better vibe for the size relationships. Well, the next Thomas is an absolutely stunning model, but it's also one of the most expensive ones that I've purchased. You can see the price ticket there, $19.95. I purchased this in at the Chinatown area in my city, and looks like it's come from Japan. I'm leaving this Thomas in his package. It looks like he's an authorised Thomas from HIT, and you can just see just the beauty of him. Well, because I haven't got him out, I can't tell if he's a pullback model. I can't see any wind-up mechanism on him. I'm sure the audience will tell me all about him. When you look at it from this angle, it's actually very Bachmann-esque, if that's a word. But it's a stunning model. Unfortunately, it has a stunning price with it as well. And apart from this stunning Tomy model from Japan, I found in a hobby shop or a toy shop in Sydney a whole squadron of these, what I'll call Playrail Thomases, and actually bought 60 of these. That's why my collection has all of a sudden had a bunch of these appear. So I bought 60, I've kept 10 for myself, and I got 54. Well, you know, you never know. On the back there, the licensing info tells me it's 2006, so this is no spring chicken Thomas. And so there's the sale price, and that's the price that I purchased it at. You can see these were selling for around $6 if you could find them in Australia. Look, I've rarely ever seen these in shops where I live. And the other interesting thing is this is a much more sensible way of nabbing Thomas and trying to empty vending machines where you're like spending hundreds of dollars just trying to find the one you want. I certainly know those Playrail Thomases are highly sought after, particularly in the USA. And I've got to say both of these Thomases are stunning additions to my collection, and there is a take and play, so you just see how big or small these Thomases are. And what I should also show you is the rear of the packaging. That was the very expensive $20 Thomas there. It's all in Japanese. I can't read Japanese. I can only assume there are other models in the range there. Someone who can read Japanese can tell me. And this was the Tomy Playrail. And the one I'm really curious about is Diesel 10, but I've never seen this range in Australia as I see this Thomas here, so it's a very, very curious thing indeed. One of the most stunning models is this large ERTL model, and this landed on my doorstep. I don't need to tell the story again because I told the story back in a collecting video a little while ago, and what's really nice is now I can pull this shot off. And what's interesting is all these ERTLs here came from the charity shop down the road to help me collect these Thomases. And there you can see the large ERTL, the medium-sized ERTL, which were very common for a day, but they weren't that common with the paper face. That's the one I really wanted to ping off. And the very, very small paper-faced ERTL that people will argue with me that they were everywhere, and I can argue back, well, I'm sorry, I didn't see them everywhere back in the day. What's really beautiful across these three ERTL models is the way they've rendered Thomas in the way that he actually looks. His proportions are fairly correct, and it's very different to the way you see Thomas rendered these days in a toy, where quite often he is all squashed up and out of proportion. And while thinking of squashed up and out of proportion, there's a take and play as a size comparison. And there's this Thomas here, and it's a Tomy Thomas. It's from 2004, and it's actually what I feel one of the best toys in my collection, as Thomas being a toy. And I didn't find this out until I took it inside and I let my son play with it. It's got like a screwdriver here, and you can go and disassemble Thomas. You can go, there's one down the funnel there, there's one down the back here, there's one underneath. And he's also motorized, but it's one of these things, it's not until you see a child playing with a toy and you see how long it entertains them for and how many times they go back to it, and then that starts to tell you, wow, that toy is actually a classic. And really, there's no other Thomas toy that I've got which is like this one, and it'd be really nice to see something like this come back onto the market. And what's nice, it's a very sizable toy. You can see it against the Take and Play Thomas down there. And you know what, my son's been exposed to all sorts of Thomas toys, you know, all the RC ones and things you ride on, the little tiny ones, but this was the one that really caught his imagination and had him playing for far longer than anything else that I've ever had in his hands. Oh yes, it wouldn't be one of my videos without talking about the Pez Thomas. This is the final one I'm going to look at from my collection at the back, but this Thomas, apart from being inexpensive, is highly versatile. I've changed it into a number of different things over the years, and I think that's the charm of it, is that it can be adapted into so many different things. I'm not sure if you know, but there's a maxi-sized Pez getting about, and I just hope that the Thomas franchise allows their character to become maxi-sized. For me, most of all, the Pez Thomas has showed to me it's a really useful Thomas toy to have. As always, thank you for watching. Keep on collecting, because I will be, and bye for now.